A 2017 report by the World Health Organization revealed that nearly 800,000 people die from suicide each year, which is one person every 40 seconds. This means there are more deaths from suicide than wars and homicides combined. A suicide attempt is a clear indication that something is gravely wrong in a person's life. Suicide is a supreme reminder of our intense psychological vulnerabilities, that no matter the race, age, or financial status of the person, they are not immune to mental health problems, and unlike other diseases, it doesn't have a definite cure. Most of the people who die by suicide have a mental health issue. 90% of people who die by suicide are experiencing some sort of mental illness or addiction. The most common underlying disorder is depression. 30 to 70% of suicide victims suffer from major depression. Each of us has an ideal dream for our accomplishments in life. If they cannot be recognized or fulfilled, generally people go in despair. Some overcome these tragedies and go on with their lives, while others dwell into the negative side of life. There are many reasons for people to commit suicide. Only later in afterlife can they explain to us why they gave up on this planet. Depression is an inner cyclone of negativity that envelops the soul of that individual. However, depression differs from male to female. It may not be that a greater number of women are depressed, but rather that a woman is more likely to receive a diagnosis. Women tend to show more symptoms than men. Conversely, society often pressures men to take a more stoic approach. The masculine ideal requires that men should never be depressed, anxious, or unable to cope, and if they are, they should never admit it. So the very experience of being distressed or having a mental health problem can be psychologically difficult for men, because they are not supposed to be vulnerable in this way. As a result, men may respond to distress with denial or avoidance. Research has indicated that men are often more likely to express depression in ways that differ from the more classic presentation, because direct admission of sadness and emotional weakness or vulnerability in men is seen as socially unacceptable. It may be the reason why depression in men is often missed or attributed to other causes. Rather than appearing sad, men experiencing emotional pain are more likely to react with anger, self-destructive behavior, self-distraction, gambling, womanizing, or numbing of pain with substance use. While women are more likely to experience suicidal thoughts, men are much more likely to take their own lives. One of the most important reasons for the difference between suicide attempts and completed suicides between men and women is the method of suicide use. Men tend to use more lethal suicide methods, such as firearms, hanging, and asphyxiation, whereas women are more likely to overdose on medications or drugs. The gender stereotype of men being tough and strong does not allow for failure, perhaps causing men to select a more violent and lethal method of suicide. While women are allowed in general social acceptance terms the option to express vulnerability and to ask for help. So most of the time, women may use a suicide attempt as a means of expressing their need for help. The research done by Samaritans, Men and Suicide Report shows how complex this issue of male suicide really is. In the report, men talk about relationships breaking down, separation from children, job loss, addiction, lack of close friendships, loneliness, and being unable to open up. Deprivation is also a major factor in male suicide, increasing the odds of taking your life by 10 times compared to the suicide attempts of more affluent men. The link between divorce and suicide has been a repeating phenomenon. Studies done by Dr. Posawa, an American sociologist, show that the rate of suicide among people who are divorced is usually reported as about 2.4 times greater than the suicide rate for a married person. He also noted that there were huge differences between the suicide rates. Divorced men were 9 times more likely to die by suicide than divorced women. Put that another way, for every 1 divorced woman who dies by suicide, there are 9 divorced men who do so. When it comes to splitting the financial assets, starting point is a 50-50 split. However, when it comes to the most valuable asset of a relationship, the children, men are less likely to be awarded the custody. Men are more likely to be displaced from the family home and have less access to their children. This causes the loss of another source of masculine identity, status, and respect, as well as adding to the isolation of some men. Family courts are biased and in most cases give the mother custody and put the father on child support. Mothers get a pass just for being mothers. This is clearly not designed to help children. If it was, then the government would monitor where the alimony check went, and they would make sure that the money is being spent on the child. Men in midlife are dependent primarily on female partners for emotional support. Women help them to recognize their own distress, provide them with care, and encourage them to seek help. While women maintain same-sex relationships across their lives, men's peer relationships drop away after 30, and men are less likely to have friends they feel they can discuss personal matters with, even if they are sociable. Men generally still expect to be taken care of in a relationship with women, and they gain more benefits from marriage than women do. When a relationship breaks down, the loss of this emotional support can be hard for men to deal with, as they don't have anyone intimate to talk about their emotions. After divorce, men can experience a big build-up. They don't recognize or deal with their distress, but let it build up to the breaking point, and this can lead to an intense self-destructive reaction to their divorce. More than women, men respond to stress by taking risks or misusing alcohol and drugs. Men tend to use alcohol to escape their troubles and to self-medicate. Men are more likely to use substances to cope than to seek help from friends, family, or formal services. Excessive drinking is an accepted part of masculine behavior, in contrast to the more feminine methods such as seeking help or talking to people. Excessive alcohol and drug use may increase impulsive behavior and reduce inhibitions, resulting in an increased likelihood of suicidal behavior. In 2010, a study was conducted by the World Health Organization on which country consumes the most alcohol on a per capita basis, and 9 out of 10 countries are Eastern European. In recent years, the rates of suicide have been decreasing in most countries in Western Europe, but marked increases have taken place in most countries in the eastern part of the European continent. High amount of alcohol consumption and high amount of suicide rates in Eastern Europe is a proof that alcohol consumption and suicide are correlated. If we were to go one step further and check the amount of alcohol consumption and the male to female suicide ratio, we would get our answer. Men from the lowest social class living in the most deprived areas are up to 10 times more likely to end their lives by suicide than those in the highest social class from the most affluent areas. In the US, men are the majority of individuals experiencing homelessness. 70% of the homeless population are men and 29% are women. Suicide rates among the homeless populations are estimated to be 9 times higher than that of the US general population. It's well known that domestic violence affects more women than men, so the domestic violence funds are more prioritized towards women. Also, the campaign is more woman-centric because around 90% of the victims are women. So one quick search on YouTube will show you thousands of videos featuring women and their experience with domestic violence. Male suicide has been described as a silent epidemic because despite the high incidence and its level of contribution to men's mortality, there's a lack of public awareness. News networks will prioritize stuff like gender pay gap and metoo movement. Most of the news will support any woman cause, but they will rarely mention hardships that men face. Instead of talking about gender wage gap that's been debunked several times, why not tackle the issue of high male suicide rates, about how it's increasing every year? One step further, why not talk about how more funding goes to women's suicide prevention, even though WHO's data clearly show that nearly 40% of countries have more than 15 suicide deaths per 100,000 men. Only 1.5% show a rate that high for women. It also shows that men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women in the Western and more developed countries. Is there 3 women die of domestic abuse, whereas 4 men die every 3.5 minutes of suicide? Even though suicide kills more people each year compared to war, domestic violence, or even road accidents, media still remains silent about it. Just look at this example. If you search domestic violence, there are around 505 million results, or if you search road accidents, there are more than 490 million results, whereas when you search for suicide, there are only around 280 million results. It remains entirely strange that through media we hear so much about killings, wars, domestic violence, and so little about suicide. Why is that? Is it because it doesn't fit their agenda, or is our society simply becoming more ignorant towards suicide, even though the study shows that suicide is the 6th leading cause of mortality around the world? On May 4 this year, a 17-year-old boy called Manav from Haryana, India, committed suicide after being accused by a girl of sexual assault on Instagram. In her post, she claimed that the boy attacked her 2 years ago. Also in the same post, she mentioned that she didn't have any proof. After her post got viral, Manav received threatening phone calls and messages and also was harassed by the girl and her friends, after which he tried to defend himself. But he couldn't handle the constant threats and believed that his side of the story wouldn't be heard, so he killed himself. The girl went on to post another story which said that if Manav couldn't handle the pressure, then it was not her fault. I mean, even grown-up matured men would commit suicide from these threats. Manav was still a teenager. This is a serious problem for this society, especially in the post-MeToo era. These days, metoo has devolved into a witch hunt that promotes prejudice against men. Girls and women randomly start accusing other random boys and men without any evidence, and people also start believing them simply based on some social media rants. While the men's side of the story continues to go unheard, baseless complaints from women get unnecessary highlights. Societal change is seldom achieved neatly, though I welcome the culture coming down hard on those who have acted reprehensibly. Everybody wins when the women who once were summarily dismissed are taken seriously. But believe women shouldn't necessarily mean disbelieve men. Imagine how many men's lives have these phony rape cases destroyed. While women are praised by the news, social media, and feminist groups for coming out, men are shunned. Men are shunned and ignored by the same group even when they are proven innocent. After a woman accuses a man of rape, he is viewed as a scum and a living filth by his friends, work colleagues, and even his own family. But even when a woman is convicted of falsely accusing a man of committing this horrendous crime, most of the time she doesn't face any backlash, nor is she held accountable by the media, nor the government. There clearly seems to be a double standards here. Why is that a man is always guilty until he is proven innocent, and a woman is always innocent until proven guilty?